Howdy y'all, this is Brawley on the Brawley Insurance Breakdown. Texas says with auto insurance that it's okay to drive with 30, 60, 25 for your limits of liability, so that if you're at fault for an accident and you're held liable, that's the amounts that they're going to pay out. But here's the problem. Is that adequate coverage? Is that enough coverage? Should you have more just because Texas says it's the state minimum limit? Is that okay? Let's break down what you really need to know about insurance so that we can make sure you know what's adequate versus what's just state required. Today we're going to go beyond what full coverage is. I personally hate the term. It's a made-up term. People understand it to be certain things, but it doesn't mean you're fully covered for anything. What we are going to talk about are a lot of different sections of the policy that I review, and I want to make sure that you're properly educated on, so you're not just focused on a cheap policy. Cheap, at the end of the day, can be the most expensive mistake you make when it comes to your auto insurance coverage. One bad accident could do a lot of harm to your financial stability if something happens and you have the cheapest coverage available. Part one is going to be liability insurance. Texas, the state of Texas, I'll say it that way. They say the state minimum limits are $30,000, $60,000, $25,000. Those go towards bodily injury per person, bodily injury per accident, and then property damage. I don't know if you've looked at the cost of a brand new vehicle lately, but $25,000 for property damage goes nowhere. So just because the state of Texas says that it's the minimum required, is that adequate? Do you need more? I don't know about you, but I see plenty of F-250s every day that cost more than $25,000 out there on the open road. So just think about that next time when you're looking at that. Multiple vehicles, just because one vehicle might be worth less than $25,000, what if multiple people are involved? Or what if somebody gets hurt? Your limits of liability are the risk that you're willing to take on if you're held liable for someone else's damages, whether it's a bodily injury or a property damage. So just because it's state minimum doesn't mean it's adequate. Part two is comprehensive and collision deductibles. This is what most people think full coverage is, but the reality is comprehensive is if something hits your vehicle. Comprehensive coverage is if something hits your vehicle. Collision is if your vehicle hits something. It's kind of the simplest way of saying it. And again, most people focus on just having that, but they don't really even understand what it means. Vehicles are paid out at actual cash value. So your vehicle is probably worth less than you think. So that's something to keep in mind when it's getting repaired and it's going to get totaled out. They're going to look at a lot of different factors that go into those repairs. But then really just full coverage isn't really the main thing. But that is what comprehensive and collision deductibles are for, is to repair your vehicle at the time of claim. Part three is underinsured motorist and uninsured motorist. One thing most people don't realize is you can do all the right things with your policy and still get hit by somebody that didn't, and they might not have enough coverage. This personally affected me about 4 years ago when I got hit by somebody whose insurance canceled 22 days before the accident, where they hit me, totaled my truck, and they didn't have insurance because the policy had canceled due to non-payment. So this is where they either might not have enough insurance or they might have no insurance at all, and your insurance then has to kick in to take care of someone else's responsibility, really. But that is why you have that coverage, so that if you're not at fault for something and someone else doesn't have enough coverage or they don't have any coverage at all, you still are taken care of with your vehicles or your bodily injuries. But that's the uninsured motorist and underinsured motorist. So again, this is a vital part of your policy. I would have been out quite a bit of money had I not had this coverage, or had I had the $25,000 for state minimum limits of liability. So again, is the state minimum requirement an adequate amount, or is it just what the state requires? Something to think about. Part four, PIP or PIP. This is something that in the state of Texas, they require you to actually acknowledge that you're rejecting in the event of you not having it on your auto policy. It can go towards lost wages, medical expenses, and or funeral bills, regardless of who's at fault for a policy. But typically you can have $2,500, $5,000, or $10,000 on the policies. A couple carriers let you go quite a bit higher. But again, this is something that most people don't realize is on a policy. That's an option on there, and it has nothing to do with full coverage, which are those comprehensive and collision deductibles. But they can come in clutch if you have some medical expenses and or funeral bills, and or just other things with loss of income due to a claim and getting it resolved. Part five, rental car coverage. Just because you might have full coverage, just because you might have comprehensive and collision deductibles, doesn't mean necessarily when your car gets to the body shop after an accident, you're going to be able to drive away with another vehicle that's taken care of by the insurance policy. Some people also think that they've got adequate coverage just because they have some rental. If you're used to driving a 2025 Tahoe and you need 5 big seats, $30 per day for rental car reimbursement is not going to go very far. You really need probably closer to $60 to $75 per day up to 30 days for that type of coverage. So it's one of those things that I kind of remind people, the worst thing that could happen is you get to the body shop to find out that you don't have rental car reimbursement on this policy, and that you're going to now have to pay out of pocket to get a rental car once your vehicle is in an accident, whether it's a dealership, whether it's a comprehensive or collision type situation. Dealers don't always require to give you a loaner, nor are body shops. Most actually probably won't anymore because they assume you've got this coverage or you should have this coverage. Part 6, know your deductible. Just like with homeowners insurance, you need to know what your portion of the risk is before claims pay out. Typically right now I'm recommending $1,000 deductibles across the board for both comprehensive and collision deductibles. And honestly, unless you drive a Tesla, and even then, I kind of recommend don't carrying glass coverage or a $0 or $50 glass deductible. You have to know the risk and what your deductibles are. Typically, the higher the deductible, the lower your premium is. But also, when you have a higher deductible, it makes you think just a little bit more, should I file this claim or not? Because what I see more often than not is people will have 3, 4, and 5 $0 claims, and they're like, hey, why do these affect me? Well, the insurance companies know that you called in to call about damage. And if you have that higher deductible and you remember, hey, there's 4 digits, I probably need to ask my insurance advisor, should I file a claim or not? That's what at least gives you a little bit of a pause. You make sure you do an educated situation with your claim stuff. Certainly, but not least, number 7, towing roadside assistance. Personally, I don't even carry it anymore. I have it on a AAA policy that is just for roadside assistance. I feel like they have a better system that gets you connected with the right people so that your car can get taken care of a lot faster than any insurance company can. But you do want to make sure you either know you do or do not have it, because every claim matters, and if you need a tow, you want to make sure you have it on the policy, or you need to know, hey, I'm just calling whoever I can get to come on out. So making sure you know that if you do or don't have roadside assistance and or towing on your policy can come in clutch. Make sure you check it out. So how much insurance do people actually need when it comes to auto insurance? Quite frankly, the answer is different for everybody. Some people do need the state minimum limits of liability. Some people need millions and millions of dollars of liability insurance. What I try to do is I have what I call the balling on a budget level of insurance, which covers you for $100,000 for bodily injury per person, $300,000 per accident, and then $100,000 for property damage. $100,000 goes a long way without breaking the bank, but gives you pretty adequate coverage. And don't get me wrong, there's still accidents that can happen that are well above $100,000. So you still want to make sure you're protecting the liability and assets that you have with liability insurance, because at the end of the day, whatever you're not covered for, they can come after. And so you want to make sure you have those correct limits of liability. Something that I always try to think about is basically it's like not necessarily how much is full coverage, but what are we trying to protect at the end of the day is kind of the best way of thinking about what you need for liability insurance. If you don't have a lot to protect, maybe you do risk it a little bit more. But as you build your assets and build your wealth, you need to have higher liability limits to make sure you're properly protected and adequately covered. Insurance shouldn't just make you street legal. Insurance should be there to protect you in your time of need when a claim happens. Price matters absolutely, but what's going to matter more is that you're properly covered come claim time so that you're not in a financial wreck on the back end after that big bad wreck you had. So if you haven't reviewed your insurance in a while, gather your declaration pages, take a look at things. If any of this does or doesn't make sense, that's fine. Give us a call, let us help, 903-289-1487, or hit the subscribe, like us, follow us, make comments, ask us questions on here, which we actually love so that we can answer for other people as well. But we're here to help. We're the Brawley Insurance Breakdown. Give us a call. Happy to help however we can.